must say that I'm very lucky to speak after Alexander, because with what he said, he gave me the opportunity to speak only for 3 or 4 minutes. I think that in the same line of analysis, what I would like to stress on, in order to be able to take benefit of the Central Eastern European experience, we have to know the differences and the common points. I think that many common points, in fact, that the main reason or origin of the movements, be it in Eastern Europe or in the Arab countries, is rebellion against dictatorship. This is the most important thing. The second is that during decades, these countries were submitted to a long-standing monopolistic power, and this monopolistic power was, against any kind of alternance, power alternance. The difference are that, as you said, Alexander, that in the Arab countries we did not have to face the need to change an economic regime or an economic system. Or in Eastern Europe, you had to face the difficulties of changing the economic system. But in the Arab countries, I'm speaking basically now of Tunisia, and with also the consent, I hope, of my friends from Egypt, we are facing another kind of economic problems, which are basically underdevelopment and poverty. Although in many countries, the countries are rich, but people are poor. If you take the case of Libya, for example. The other point is that we did not have to face, and we do not have to face, an ideology. But in Eastern and Western countries, and Central European countries, you had to face and to destroy an ideology, this ideology of the communist or Soviet ideology. So now what is the process was, of course, similar but different also. On one hand, in both areas, I mean Central and Eastern Europe and Arab countries, in both areas, there were and there is a national impulse from inside, from the countries, to change and to make the rebellion against this dictatorship. But in Europe, in Eastern and Central Europe, you had the chance to have what I can call a receiving structure. This receiving structure, which is Europe, your home, Europe, was a very important factor to facilitate this change. In fact, if I remember well, during that time in '89, etc., West European countries were behind this movement and trying to help this movement. But in the Arab countries, we did not have, and we do not until now have, any home in the political sense. The Arab League is a very, very, very weak organization. The Arabism is also a very weak, concept. So we do not have this receiving structure, which is, I think, very important. In Europe, you had the OSCE, you had the OCDE, you have the Council of Europe, you have, the NATO as a tool for defense, etc. You had also to reintegrate the Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, etc. So for us, people, when they made the revolution, at least if I speak from on the Tunisian case, people had to, as you said, Alexander, they had to fight immediately from scratch, in fact. Just young people who started this movement. That's why the originality of the Tunisian revolution is that it was not a revolution prepared or frameworked within an ideology. It's just and simply, and this is very important, is the refusal and the rebellion against dictatorship. So, challenges and difficulties. I think that the first thing is that the humanitarian price of the changes in the Arab countries is very high. I'm not talking about Tunisia or about Egypt, where, I mean, with all the deaths, but the situation in Libya is catastrophic from the humanitarian point of view. The price of this I mean, violence which is going on in Libya is very high. I mean, as a lawyer, I had to see if what is the conflict in Libya is defined. I think that all the definitions of all conflicts in international law, I mean, are there. You have civil war, you have international war, you have internal unrest, you have everything. So the price is very high, and I think that here there is a kind of, I don't know if I should say moral responsibility of NATO, or, I mean, this is, I mean, because also the surrounding areas, it's Europe, I mean, in general, is a little bit hesitant concerning how to support and to which extent to support these movements, because there is this fear of Islamic, I mean, taking over, Islamists taking over in Libya or in Tunisia or in Yemen or in Egypt or in Syria. So this is also a kind of obstacle which we are facing in our countries. In spite of this, what is very important is to see how to make the cross-fertilization between the experience here in East Europe, Central East Europe, and the Arab countries. I think that two main ideas or methods. One is to reinforce all possibilities and to create possibilities and opportunities of reinforcing bilateralism. I mean, I'm talking, we are in Bulgaria, to which I'm very grateful to organize this, and to see that, for example, Bulgaria and Hungary and other countries, they have sometimes very specific ties and relations in development, in the cooperation with some specific countries. So it's to intensify this. And second, what is very important, and it was mentioned also by the Secretary General, that we have to really revisit the system of cooperation between the EU and these Arab countries. The Lampedusa, for example, case, drama, the migration issue has to be revisited and to be dealt with another new approach. We cannot, I mean, accept, when I say we, with the Arab countries and the Europeans, we cannot accept that these people, I mean, are transformed in a case of internal fight between Mr. Berlusconi and Mr. Sarkozy. I mean, sorry for being that clear. So I think that this issue of migration must be dealt with in dignity and with creativity. I mean, we see that the policy of fortress does not work anymore in our countries and in Europe also. So I think this is, an important issue. The second point concerning the multilateralism, and I will end there, Chairman, is that these countries, the Arab countries, they need the support, not economic support, etc., but need the support to help them to constitute, to build a regional area. So Europe can deal with the Arab countries and with the Mediterranean areas, etc. So we cannot continue to work only, I mean, the small Tunisia with the big European Union, or the small Tunisia with big France. We have, and it is, I think, that now there is a clear conviction and a clear, I mean, people are, I mean, now we are in the era of globalization. We cannot continue to make this isolation, this tete-a-tete between countries. And I think that the perspectives of creating Maghreb Union, of creating, I mean, a free zone, economic free zone, Arab economic free zone, to deal with Europe as an ensemble. So this is also an important way of thinking. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much.